From the heart of Southern Illinois, this is Roots of Leadership. Long-form conversations with the political figures shaping our region. Not just what they do, but who they are and how they got here. This episode is sponsored by the Little Nashville Cafe in downtown Marion, So Ill Cinema, and Swinford Media Group.
Dave Severin, thank you for being on the podcast today. And like I've said to previous people, the whole thing is to get more of a look at kind of not what you think about current events or what's going on in Springfield today, but what's the path that led you to where you're at and the ups and downs along the way. So start at the beginning. Where are you from?
Sure. First off, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be with you today, Aaron. I appreciate that. And it's been a good road meeting you with our grandson and your sons, and so I appreciate that. So I'm the eighth of 9 kids, and so I have there's 4 brothers, 4 sisters, and so as a kid growing up, people say, how in politics, how are you going to handle this? And they say, you're going to be intimidated with being in the minority party and those kinds of things. And I said, well, let me tell you some stuff about me. I said, first off, I had older sisters that dressed me up like a girl, and I have older brothers that use me as a punching bag. So I said, I've been in the minority for a long time. I said, I'm a Baptist I'm a Pentecostal in a Baptist area, and I said, I've been a Republican in a Democrat area my entire life. So I've been in the minority for my entire life. So that hasn't intimidated me. And then our family was in the nursing home business. My parents started a shelter care home when I was 6 years old, and my oldest brother was mentally challenged. He was actually a triplegic. He couldn't walk or talk or use one of his arms. And so at the dinner table, the table would be just like this, Aaron, and my dad sat on the far end. I sat right here next to my sister, who always left me with the chicken wings, and I would cry when it was chicken day, but I'll tell that story maybe later. But next to my father was my oldest brother. My father's name was George. My oldest brother's name was George Jr., called him Georgie, and he epileptic, and my dad made an adult-size high chair, and so he actually sat in a high chair. My dad carried him everywhere, and so I said that I learned to be a servant watching my father take care of my older brother. And so then my parents got in the nursing home business, shelter care homes it was called back in the 60s, and taking care of people. And so then we actually lived on the property of the nursing home in 1970 that my parents built, had 96 residents, 75 staff. We actually lived on the property, and so I started from mowing the lawns to working in activities, being activity director, social service director, working there for half of my life. And so being a servant isn't something that I went to school and read about or watched somebody other than my father taking care of my brother. It's actually something I've done all of my life, from Sunday school teacher to youth pastor to in charge of Special Olympics for Southern Illinois for about 12 years, working at the nursing home, volunteering my time with county organizations, social service, different organizations, Centerstone, which was Franklin Williamson Human Services back in the day, and some different things. So been on the school board for 30 years. And so that's my background.
Well, so back to your 6. What did your parents do before the nursing home?
Well, so this could be a whole podcast in itself, but we moved to Benton when I was 3 years old. And so, neat story, I'll tell you real quick. So my parents had never heard of Benton, didn't know anything about it, no relatives, no job. But my dad woke up in the middle of the night, wrote down something on a piece of paper, went back to sleep, got up the next morning, and he told my mom. This is the story my dad told, because I was only 3 when it happened. But he used to tell this when he actually they built their own church and pastored it. So he would tell this story in church, how the Lord touched their hearts and how he came to Southern Illinois. So my dad gets up the next morning and he tells my mom, he said, I had a dream in the middle of the night. God told me we're supposed to move to Benton. And my mom said, he told me 6 months ago, I've been waiting for him to tell you. And so that was what he wrote down, was Benton. He never heard of it. So actually,
and where were they living?
So we lived in Deerfield. So I was born in Deerfield, and that's my parents were from Chicago area. So looked it on the map, came down to Benton, found a house. My dad had a job in full-time in Chicago. He put in his resignation, came to Benton, no job. My mom was taking care of 8 kids, and so one thing led to another, and so I could tell you stories on how he got his first job in Benton. It's just amazing. So that's how we came to Benton. So he did get a job at Lampley Electronics, which was a electronics store in Benton. He was a salesman, and so then sometime during my early years of life, they felt to get into the shelter care home business. And my oldest brother that I talked about, actually he had an epileptic seizure and passed away in his sleep 2 days before his 22nd birthday. And actually, he was actually buried on his 22nd birthday. I remember, like I said, I was just a little boy. But and they had already started in the shelter care home business, but the love for people that my parents had, and like I said, taking care of my older brother, and they just had a love and a passion for people. And they were amazing.
That's what an interesting story. I didn't know that.
That's how we got here.
Yeah. So you sort of come of age. You're old enough to remember stuff. You're living in Benton. What was growing up in Benton like? Not just in your family, but you come from small town Southern Illinois in an era that a lot of us kind of look fondly back on, and the things that have changed. But what was growing up in Benton like?
Oh, it was awesome. So. Tight-knit, neighborhood friends. Actually, we lived a couple blocks from the library, so that was my office. And having, 8 brothers and sisters, had a bicycle, loved to ride my bike in the neighborhood with my buddies. But I say that the library was my office because, it was, as a little kid, you couldn't wait to get out of the house because you had a lot of chores to do, or you were going to get picked on by your older brothers and sisters. So the library had hot rod magazines and
So, growing up in Benton, football in the yard.
Yeah, so we played football behind the library there, and actually our house also was next door to a little grocery store. It was called Leffler's Market, and so actually my mother worked there. So when we moved to Benton, no jobs, so my father gets a job as a salesman for Lampley Electronics. My mom worked part-time, has 8 kids now. She worked part-time at the grocery store next door. She ironed clothes. I didn't realize just how... call it poor, financially challenged maybe sounds more, current, but we were poor, and I didn't know it, but I rode with her when she was delivering the ironing that she had done for the police chief, the fire chief, different bankers in town. I just, was riding in the car with Mom, being the youngest son, that we were, I was going with her, and didn't realize later in life, I realized that she was taking care of 8 kids, has a mentally handicapped, challenged, triplegic son, then who's in home, never institutionalized. He was, stayed here at the house with us the whole time growing up. And so works next door at that grocery store. My father is a salesman, and they were workaholics. They were perfectionists, workaholics, anal, and micromanagers. And so that's what made them very successful in the nursing home business, taking care of people, because they didn't leave any stone unturned.
I've got to ask, what position did you play in the backyard football?
So actually, I got to run the ball, and it was tackle, of course, and it was usually, we'd try to get 8 guys. It would be 4-on-4, and it wasn't a 100-yard field, of course, but we thought it was humongous. And I will tell you this, Aaron, now that I go back and look at that field, it looks tiny. But when grade school kids growing up, we thought the place was humongous. But we had a lot of fun, and those kids that grew up with are still friends today.
That's great. So transition then as you get a little bit older.
Sure.
Did you play sports at Benton?
I did. Actually, I was skinny a long time ago.
Well, so Benton has part of its culture and history in Southern Illinois is very sports heavy. And in fact, they're on another great run.
My grandson's on that basketball team.
So who did you play with, and what sports did you play? What was that like? Was it down years when you were going through high school, or good years?
Yeah. So I didn't play sports in junior high. Actually, I was fat and short. In my freshman year, I grew a whole bunch and lost a bunch of weight. And so my parents wouldn't let me play football, so I ran cross country like my older brothers did, and then played basketball, and then ran track. And so the class, I graduated in 1976 from Benton High School. My class in 8th grade won state basketball, and then we had a phenomenal basketball team. We were good in all sports, but basketball in 75, my junior year, we had one of the top teams in the state. until our All-State center, actually All-American, he blows his knee out the last home game of the year. But we made it through to the sectional finals. But we were, our team was amazing.
Huh. Football? Were
Nope.
they as good back then, or?
No, the football, we were competitive, but not like, the last years. Benton's had some, tremendous football teams. That was back there weren't the playoffs then. You had the Turkey Day game. That was the big deal, that you were off for 3 or 4 weeks. Then Benton and Frankfort played, on Thanksgiving. And so that was a big deal, going to that. My wife was a cheerleader, so that was a big deal, that day.
Okay, so I'm glad you opened that thread up.
Right.
You met your wife in high school then, or I guess maybe before that?
Well, actually, she was in 8th grade, and I was a sophomore. It was April 14th, 1974.
Wow.
And that was my license plate for several years. It was a Sunday afternoon, Easter, and we met on a dirt basketball court in the Boneyard Woods, they call it. And she wouldn't be on my team because she said I was a ball hog.
Was she right?
Yeah. I learned that there's never pass up an opportunity to shoot. It's never a bad shot. But yeah, she was in 8th grade. I was a sophomore, and that's when we started going together, and we've been married 47 years.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that. I didn't even know she was from Benton. But
Yeah.
all right, so you graduate. You said that. Did you work for your parents' business through high school then?
Yes. So actually, my senior year, I had enough credits where I went to school half a day, and then I worked at the nursing home half a day. So I was actually the activity director at Mom and Dad had the large nursing home they built, and then they had one other shelter care home that they still had. And so I worked both of those places half a day. And so that was, my start as far as actually working in the nursing home with the residents, and then transitioning from that to being what they call the social service director, working with the residents with goals and those kinds of things. My job also was to take the residents to their doctor's appointments. So I got to know doctors all over Southern Illinois, and it was a lot of fun, Aaron. The taking care of people is it's an honor to be able to help people. And our philosophy was that when people came to the nursing home, a lot of times it was their later years of their life. And I used to tell the family, I said, our goal is to make the residents' lives the very best we possibly can. And possibly, because we had some residents that came from mental institutions, possibly the days with us were the best days of their life. My philosophy as an activity director was, if you get to do it, Aaron, we do it. We went fishing, swimming, Cardinal baseball games. We went to the library every week. We went bowling. We did all kinds of awesome stuff. And so, in fact, because of the activity department was organized, we might have done more things than the average person on the street.
That's great. And
Yeah.
to kind of just break briefly,
Sure.
I don't know anybody who hasn't been affected by a family member being in some kind of care facility.
Sure.
And to do that with the right motives and the right way,
Yeah.
I'm sure meant a whole lot to a whole lot of families.
Sure. I mean, I'll finish with this on that segment. So the nursing home was on 28 acres. So we had a quarter-mile nature trail. We had 18 beehives. We had chickens, raccoons. We had rabbits. We had 2 pet raccoons. A mama raccoon had some babies in my parents' attic. So my dad gets a fur bearer's license. He gets the mama raccoon out of the attic. He keeps the babies, raises those, and then we had a resident at the nursing home. His name was Fred Coons, and he took care of the raccoons. But we actually had a fur bearer's license. So our nursing home was more like a resort. The front yard at the nursing home was a softball field. We played softball in the afternoon. We had a large garden. We had a 300-bushel cellar. We had grapes. It was, Aaron, if you needed to go to a shelter care home or a nursing home, we always had a waiting list. Our place was the place to go. It wasn't because of me. It was my parents. But I had the opportunity to grow up with them and learn those things and carry those things on to my life.
That's really neat. So you get to the end of high school then.
Yep.
What did you think you were going to do? And I'll ask, were you already drawn to political stuff at that point, or was that really not going on in your mind yet?
So I tell people I've been a politician since the day I was born, because I was advocating not to be dressed up like a girl and not to be used as a punching bag for my brother. So I was campaigning every day to stay alive in the Severin house. And so that's kind of my story about politics. But I never, we get to, how did I run for state office, but that was never on my radar, or that wasn't the end goal or anything.
And what'd you think you were going to do?
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, my mom kept the books in a ledger. You did everything by pencil, and she was a perfectionist. That books had to be to the penny, and so if it was off, she had one of those old adding machines, that you punch in the numbers and you pull the handle, has the tape. She would pay me if the checking account was off, whatever. She'd give me the checks and give me the receipts, whatever, as a little kid. And if I could find it, she'd pay me a quarter or whatever. So I was fascinated with numbers and fascinated with that kind of stuff. And so I thought, well, maybe I want to be a CPA or want to do something with numbers or money and those kinds of things. But then the state changed their ruling. So if you had a nursing home with more than 90 residents, you had to have a social worker. So I'm a senior in high school, thinking, what am I going to do? College-wise, my dad's grabbing me by the shirt and says, "You're going to be our social worker." Sure, Dad. Okay, whatever. So Rend Lake College did not have a social service program. John A. Logan did. So I went to John A. Logan for 2 years, got my associates in human services, and that's kind of how that went. And so that's how I got involved with John A. Logan. So that's my alma mater.
I wondered that, knowing that you were from Benton.
Yeah.
But so even when you had that, did you think when you were at this point in life that you'd be running the nursing home, or what?
No.
Did you, or were you? When did you start looking past tomorrow or
Sure.
the next day?
That's a great question. So when I'm going to John A., then get through school there, and then trying to figure out what to do. After high school and before, I'm trying to remember, before John, I actually went to Bible college in Tyler, Texas for a year.
Okay.
Which was awesome. My wife and I did. And so it was a 2-year school.
So were you married then?
Yes, yep.
When did you get married?
So we got married in 1977, so a year after I was out of high school. Yep.
Gosh,
and so,
not even 20 yet?
Exactly right. Whew. And so in fact, our son Travis, we lived in a fifth wheel travel trailer at the Bible college on the campus there, and his bassinet, whatever, was in the kitchen of the fifth wheel.
That's
and
fantastic.
He learned to walk in the girls' dorm. But so went to Bible college for a year. We thought we'd go 2 years, but Mom and Dad needed us back home, and so we came back home, worked in the nursing home, and then did that. And you asked me as far as looking down the road. So my older brother and brother-in-law, have older brothers and sisters. The family all worked in the nursing home. So I was the young kid. Even though when I was an adult, 20 years old, I was still the young one. So I didn't have, ambition of running the nursing home or owning it, whatever. My older brothers and sisters were kind of further up the food chain on that. So I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. And then things changed in the state, and the state got way behind in paying nursing homes their payment. That Mom and Dad, most of the residents were Medicaid, and so they were paid by the state. And so the state owed my parents a lot of money. My parents were getting older, and they decided they were going to get out of the nursing home business. And so what happened was none of us kids felt like it was a fit for us, because we didn't want the state owing us $500,000 in 1988.
Yeah.
And so Mom and Dad sell the nursing home. I continue to work there some, but I realized, okay, what am I going to do? Well, loving sports, I started All Stars and Stitches in my garage in 1992, building trophies, and then went from there. So that's kind of how I got into All Stars and Stitches.
Before going into that, did you think you would be a pastor? Because most people who go to Bible college, that's at least on the menu of where you think your life might be headed.
Well, so my older brothers and sisters all went to Bible college, okay? And so I have brothers and sisters that were missionaries, been all over the world. I have brothers and sisters that are pastors today and have been pastors. And so I just, it was kind of like, okay, that's the thing that you do if you're a Severin, you go to Bible college. So I had the opportunity, again, teaching Sunday school. I actually started doing that when I was in high school, being youth pastor, but I never felt like I was going to pastor a church or that kind of thing. I will say this, that my faith is the number one thing in my life, and then of course my wife and family and work. But taking opportunities every day to share the gospel with people and to, again, being a servant, not only of the state, but number one is for the Lord. And so I take that very serious and take every opportunity I possibly can to help people, encourage people, pray with people. No matter where I am, I take the opportunity.
That's great.
Yeah.
So 1992, All Stars and Stitches.
Yes, sir.
Did you think at the time, because for most people, most businesses start like this, that was going to be a viable business, putting trophies together?
Yeah.
Or was there nobody really doing that and you saw a lane where you thought...
Well, Egypt Trophy was the place. In fact, I can tell you what the phone number is right now because that's where we bought all of our trophies for Special Olympics, for the nursing home when we had different competitions and neat things, and for the church. And so that was the place. And so, but I loved sports, and my sister and brother-in-law actually had started this All-Star Trophy in their basement. He gets a job with the post office, and they're going to sell it. So I'm thinking, okay, I love sports. I think I can do this. So we take trophies, and people that were buying trophies were buying T-shirts somewhere, were buying embroidery. So I thought, hey, we'll do that. So we just kept expanding. And so my philosophy was if you need it, we'll figure out a way to meet your need. And so that's kind of how we expanded that. And so, yeah, I mean, the plan was that was what I was going to do to, put food on the table. And my wife had worked at the nursing home. Then she went to school to be a teacher. So she gets a job teaching. So she's teaching school, and I'm building trophies.
That's nice. And so how many years did you do All Stars and Stitches?
Well, so we started in 92, and so then we were in my garage. We had a 2-car garage at the house. We put a wall down the middle of it, so it was a 12 by 24-foot box with no windows, a door. We stuck an air conditioner in the wall and started building trophies. So we did that for a year. Then we moved on the square in Benton, and we rented a building for about 10 years. And
which building?
So it was on the it's right on the square in the corner next to, it was Bank of Benton at the time, Boatman's Bank.
Okay.
So it would be on the northwest corner.
Okay.
And so, it was a showroom before that. And so that's where All Stars and Stitches, went. And then in 2003, we built All Stars and Stitches where it is today. We bought an old building, tore it down, saved all the bricks. And so I love paving bricks. So we saved that building and built All Stars and Stitches, and then expanded it to doing all kinds of stuff.
And you still do that today, right?
Yes, sir. So we have All Stars and Stitches in Benton, and then in the middle of COVID, I thought, hey, let's get involved with some more stuff. So we bought a trophy shop here in Marion called Graphics Galore. So we actually do all of our awards and things here in Marion, and we do all the printing and banners and signs and all the other types of things. We do that in Benton.
All right.
Yeah.
So to jump back then on the timeline, your first elected office was school board, right?
That's correct, yes.
And stop me because I'm no expert in your biography, but I think I know this. When did you jump on with that, and what led you down that path? Because as you well know, the day, whether it's school board or state rep or anything, when you put your name out there to be publicly voted on and validated or not, it's not for the faint of heart. And so what gave you the drive to do that? How did it go in your first run? Start there.
Yeah. So my very best friend, Steve McCommons, was youth pastor at a church in Benton, and I'm a youth pastor at another church in Benton. And so we were very involved with youth. Actually, we brought the Peters brothers in, which this was a long time ago, probably 1987, 1988, and they had something called Why Knock Rock. And so they came and gave a presentation. We got them into the school. We actually, at the Benton High School, we had the event, and so there was about close to 1,000 people there. We got permission from the school for them to come in and do a lyceum at the junior high and the high school that day, and had the event that night. And so that was amazing. And so we were really involved with youth, and so we kind of challenged each other, said, hey, let's get involved with schools, let's get involved, school board. So we did that. He's a superintendent of the coal mine at the time, and he gets transferred to Pennsylvania. So that was 1988, and so he says, Severin, he said, you still got to run for school board, because we were going to run together. And he's a big 6'6" guy. He played offensive tackle for Georgia Tech. He was a big guy, and we were best of buddies. And when I was with him, everything was all safe. And so I thought, hey, we run together. He'll be the brains of it, and I'll be the mouthpiece. And so he says, you still got to run. It's like, oh, okay, I will. So I run, and I learned this in '88, and I use this every day of my life. In politics, every day you run like you're losing, but you plan to win. So I thought, I'm probably not going to win, but I did everything possible. So just running for school board, I talked to everybody I possibly could, told them everybody in Benton knew who I was anyways, from the nursing home and, just being involved with everything under the sun. But told them what I was doing, asked for their vote. And so then I'll never forget that night staying up till late. Back then, you didn't know it was after midnight when they were counting the ballots. And I listened to Q106, and I can show you in my house where I was standing, listening to the radio, and find out, that I win. And so then got on the school board, and then it's every 4 years, and I was elected. So I was on there for 30 years. So you do the math, 7 or 8 times, and I was elected. And my passion is serving, taking care of people and young people. And so it was an honor for me to be able to do that, to work with the teachers and the educators and administrators, the kids, the custodians, the kitchen staff. And I'll dissect or divert to this just for a second, that I figured out if I want to find out what's going on at the school, you got to be there. Well, I like to eat, and so growing up in the nursing home with institutional food, everybody's like, school food, is terrible. I love school food. So I would drop in about lunchtime at all the different little schools in Benton, and after I did that, I'd go maybe once a week to different schools, and the superintendent called me one day, and he said, Dr. Patton is his name, and he said, is everything okay? I said, yeah, everything's great. He said, well, you're in my schools every week. I said, well, 2 things, Dr. Patton. I said, one is I like to eat, so I'm just checking out, see, how the food is. And I said, it's an opportunity for me to see the kids, talk to the teachers, whatever. And so he was concerned, what's this new board member, young guy? I was 30 years old at the time, whatever. And so he was like, what is this guy doing? So that's how I got into the school board and involved with that. In fact, when I was elected as state rep, they said, you probably should resign from being on the school board because you're going to take votes for education that people are going to beat you up on. So I said, okay. Otherwise, I think I'd still be on there today. I love it. The school was, in fact, I took great interest in it, driving around, making sure that everything's okay. And the weekends are the doors locked or the lights on. And I think I drove the custodians and the administrators crazy because I'd call them and say, hey, the lights are on in the south wing, or hey, the gate's unlocked at the track. And they're like, okay, but I care about what I'm involved in.
Especially back then, because my dad was a public school superintendent, and I mean, there weren't cell phones, and
that's exactly right.
And you couldn't look on your phone to see if doors were locked.
That's exactly right.
So having that extra set of eyes mattered more back then than it probably does today.
That's right. Yeah.
So you're on the school board. You've got your business.
Right.
Let's move toward the 2016 election. And I want to start wherever you want to start with, because I've got a bunch of questions on. That's a big leap to put yourself out there in a very different way. But what are the events that led you to throwing your hat in the ring against a longtime incumbent?
Right.
You were part of a change point on the timeline in Southern Illinois that a lot of people never thought would happen. And you look, the pendulum will change again at some point. We're not foolish, but boy, you had to be a Democrat to win.
That's right.
To win my whole childhood, and until that wasn't the case anymore. And you were part of the leading edge of that.
Right.
So start wherever you want to, and in however this played out.
Sure. I will tell you this. So in 1992, I ran for circuit clerk in Franklin County.
Okay.
And so my son was in 8th grade. Travis was in 8th grade, going to be a freshman. And so I'll never forget that summer. That was one of the hottest summers on record. So Penny and I and Travis and one of his buddies, because we, one son, and he always had a buddy with him, whatever. We'd be going door to door every afternoon. On Saturdays, he'd go with us, Travis and his buddies. And it was kind of funny, Aaron, that some of his buddies were Democrats. They were going with me as a Republican, going door to door, passing out stuff. If Brett Blondie's dad, Bobby Blondie, if he knew what Brett was doing those days, he probably would have never let him do it.
Well, let's go there, because I didn't know about this.
Sure.
So 92. What led you? All right, so that's like a circle out of local school,
right?
And you jumped into that. How did that go? And what led you to throw your hat in for that.
Sure. So mom and dad sold the nursing home in '88. So I start doing the trophy thing, and I'm thinking, love serving people, love the numbers thing. And a circuit clerk, you're responsible for a lot of different accounts as far as those kinds of things, and scheduling of the court dates and the docket and all that kind of stuff, which was fascinating to me. And organization stuff, I've always enjoyed, putting events together and all kinds of stuff. And so just kind of one thing led to another, and I felt like there was a position that I could be successful at. And so I had never run again for anything except for the school board, and so went at it 1,000% and did everything we possibly could do. Unfortunately, that was when Bill Clinton, the first time he ran for president, and what happened in Franklin County, I'll never forget people telling me this when we were going to the different voting polls. They said people voted that day that they hadn't seen in their entire life. They got people activated to vote, and so the gentleman that I was running against, he won. And so I tell people, I said, at that time I got the most votes any Republican had ever gotten in Franklin County, but I was first loser. So it broke my heart, and I really thought we could win. And so when I lost, I thought I'm not going to do this ever again. I literally worked myself almost to death to going door to door. We went literally the county-wide, Aaron, knocked on every door between my wife and I, Travis, one of his buddies, that was, of course, doing, the few parades in Franklin County and those kinds of things. So that was 92. And so I figured, all right, when we didn't win, just kind of left that alone, still on the school boards, still having all stars and stitches. And then I'm in my store in 2015. A gentleman by the name of Richard Stubblefield, a very active a political person, actually from Cesar. He lives in Mount Vernon now. He would we'd make political buttons. So he was coming in picking up political buttons. He comes by my office in my store, and he knocks on the door. I'm sitting in my office. He says, "Hey, you ever think about running for state rep?" I answered him with one word. I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, we're looking for someone to run for state representative. So he kind of explained whatever. And I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll go home and talk to my wife." I said, "We'll pray about it, and I'll get back with you." So, okay. So I don't remember what day of the week that was, of course, but I went home, talked to Penny, and she said, "You know what we're going to do?" I said, "Yeah, we're going to pray." So when I prayed, and I've told this story hundreds of times, Aaron, and not as much because I've been doing this for a few years, but when first elected, it was an opportunity to share my faith and brag on the Lord. But so when I prayed, I've never heard God speak to me audibly, but He spoke to my heart, and this is what I felt that He said to me: "You've been faithful, I'll give you another chance." And that's where I tell people that faithful is that, and giving me another chance was that I ran in 92 and didn't win. God didn't say, I didn't feel Him tell me, "You're going to win, so I'll give you another chance." And being faithful is, I tell people this, we're men, we're human, we make mistakes, do all different kinds of things in life. And so I felt the Lord speak to me, "You've been faithful, I'll give you another chance." And so I called Richard back and I said, "Richard," I said, "I prayed about it, my wife and I said, we're all in." I said, "Now here's the thing, no one's going to outwork me." I said, my parents are workaholics. I've learned that. I'm a workaholic. I said, John Bradley is not going to outwork me. I said, I'll do everything I need to do. I said, there's one problem. I said, we don't have the finances for a race like that. Bruce Rauner was the governor at the time, and he said, no problem, Rauner will put the money in. So if you look back, I believe he put $3 million in our race. And so we started out going to each. So it was 3 counties at the time. It was Franklin County, half of Hamilton County, and all of Williamson County. So I went to the different county precinct committee meetings and introduced myself. And I'll never forget going to Mackey's Pizza the first time in Marion here with the Williamson County group. And the only person that I knew was Ted Pentecost. And because the business that their family had was my father did business with him. So Mr. Pentecost and Mr. Severin, their fathers knew each other, and that was my only person in the room. So I got up and gave them my line, my spiel, and they bought into me, and they saw that I think the energy that I had and the compassion, and the Lord had to touch their hearts too, because that was the largest part of the district. So
when you jumped in, you jumped in to win, because some people, especially against the odds that you would have been facing, it is, hey, I'm just trying to get my name out there.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have done it if you didn't think you would win.
So I will tell you this. I don't know, when I prayed and felt the Lord speak, that I was scared to death. And I will tell you this, I'm still nervous every day. When I'm on Tom Miller, and if Tom listens to this, whatever, I've never told him this, but I'm nervous before I'm on the radio. I was just on, a few days ago, and I tell people this. I think the day you're not nervous or you're not on edge, I think is the day you better quit and go home. But I didn't think I could win, but my goal was to win. You know what I'm saying? In the back of my mind, I was preparing myself for 1992 when I did everything I could and I lost. So I was preparing myself for that in the back of my mind. But I did everything, literally everything. My wife and Travis and we worked our tails off, got good people to work with us and volunteer, and did everything that we needed to do. And there's an old thing in sales, and you know this, it's called STP. You see the people, you show the people, and sell the people. And that was the thing as far as, going door to door and seeing people. And we knocked thousands of doors. And it wasn't necessarily running against John Bradley. I was running to be the state representative, and he happened to be the person that was, I don't know if I should say in the way, or you know what I'm saying. And so I learned more about him, and I knew who he was just from being involved in things. But so not to get off on that, but that's kind of how that happened.
So was there a primary? Or did you have an opponent in the primary?
Yeah, there was a primary, and in fact, that's a whole other interesting thing. So there was a primary, didn't have anyone in the primary, and so I was just in the general then.
Gotcha. So throughout the campaign, and we'll talk a little bit about the campaign here in a minute, but as far as how you felt throughout it, how was it difficult to stay up against the odds you were against, or were you seeing polling that was telling you something that eyeballs weren't seeing? And I'll tell you actually a little story. I think this is when I met you. I walked in the DuQuoin State Fair parade, and you were in that parade. And I remember a golf cart went out, and you pushed a golf cart at least part of the parade to help somebody. And you had 5 or 6 people, and your opponent was with a group that was a city block long.
Right.
And the optics, and I was younger at the time. It
Sure.
looked like business as usual in Southern Illinois politics.
Right.
Was it tough in those situations to continue to tell yourself you had a shot, or were you seeing data that people like me weren't seeing? Did you know that there was a change going on?
I'm smiling because they wouldn't tell me. They never told me what the what the numbers were, and so I knew that we had John Bradley at the time was the number 2 most powerful Democrat in the state of Illinois. Mike Madigan is the speaker, and John was the chairman of the finance committee, and so powerful in the state of Illinois, and a lot of backing from different groups and those kinds of things. And so, but here's the thing: you got to remember, 4 older sisters dressed me up like a girl. 4 older brothers using me as a punching bag. I'm a Pentecostal in a Baptist area. I'm a Republican in a Democrat area. So all those things, and having my faith and trust in the Lord and support of my family, I was nervous, but as far as intimidated, and they tried to intimidate me. I mean, I could share stories, and I won't on this, but there's different things that they did to try to intimidate me as this young kid, so to speak. I'm in my 50s, but the young kid politically. But I did not let that intimidate me, and that actually. The competitiveness in me is like you even wanted to push more. But I will tell you, I ran every day like I was losing. And in fact, I've been reelected several times, and I'm running like I'm losing. Today, I'm running like I'm losing. I'm serving people, being a salesperson for All Stars and Stitches, or when it was the nursing home, it was Special Olympics, it was Fires Revival Church, or it was a Centerstone board that I served on, and all those different things. I'm selling, I'm working, and it isn't something, well, today I make a list. Well, this is what I'm going to do to sell. If I see someone on the street, it's who I am. It's what I am. I don't have to crank it up or turn it on or make it up. It's what I am.
So into the campaign itself then, especially for down here, a lot of money. It maybe wasn't the prettiest campaign.
Right. Tried to ruin my name, tried to ruin my business.
Well, and so How did you handle that? Because that, again, is a different tier from school board or a county office.
Yeah.
You had powerful people who had never met you,
Right.
who were out to not just win, but the playbook is to destroy.
That was the game plan. And so, when you're right in the middle of it, you're just working every day and doing everything possibly that you need to do. And so when I look back at it now, what they did was not right. I mean, the personality that I have, if my buddy Steve McCommons, the offensive tackle for Georgia Tech that was 6'6", if they'd messed with him, things would it'd been held differently. And he's my best buddy and love the Lord and those kinds of things. But my personality helped me to be able to adjust to those things. And because they made videos pointing outside the front door of my store in Benton, saying that's where that guy works, and talking about an employee that I had hired that had some challenges in his life, and I gave him an opportunity and gave him a chance, and so they tried to destroy not only me and my business, but also that gentleman that had made a mistake in his life. They tried to destroy his family, and that wasn't right. And so.
Now, to the credit of,
yes, sir.
I would say, the voters of Southern Illinois, if I recall, I think people that kind of backfired
Absolutely.
in the end, right? Like
Yeah.
that even, I mean, as dirty as politics are, that people still had some sense of this is a step beyond where anybody feels comfortable.
That's exactly right. I mean, I'll say this. I told people jokingly later, I said my opponent was my best campaign manager, because the things that they chose to try to defeat me were the things that got me over the over the winning line. Mailers, they were, I forget how many thousand, maybe $12,000 to $17,000 a mailer. Sometimes I would when I'd go door to door, there were people that said they didn't get one mailer. Sometimes they got 4 and 5 mailers a day against me, and they would have them stacked on their. I could show you. Actually, there's some houses. I remember the exact house where they had them stacked on their front porch, and they said, "We've been waiting for you. We want to show you this." And they said, "We don't know who you are, but we're voting for you because this isn't right what they're doing to you." And that just happened, snowballed over and over and over. When people saw, they're like, if this person is already in office, they already have the power that they have. Why do they need to do this? And so that actually was a part of the winning package.
Well, so as you get closer to the election, was there ever a point before Election Day where anybody told you the internal polling, or did they keep you blind to the end?
They kept me blind to the end. I will tell you this, that the young man that they sent down to help run my campaign, there was a Sunday not too far out from the election, and we had gotten along tremendous. He was a young man. He'd come from the Rauner group, and he'd come to run the campaign, and we kind of got into it. We clashed a little bit, and so there were some things we disagreed on, whatever. And it just pushed my buttons, and I said, "You know what? Do I need to make a phone call to your superiors?" And he said, "Really?" And so he kind of came back at me, whatever, and he let me know. He said, "I don't know if I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I got an inkling that maybe things were going pretty good." But they didn't tell me that. We didn't take the gas off, because he saw what a worker that I was, and he was also. And so I mean. They led me to believe I was losing, and that's the theory, the philosophy that I've always had, that I'm losing. And so that's, but there was that little glimpse. They didn't tell me numbers or anything, but so.
So that takes it then to election night.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you? How did that play out?
Yeah.
Like what was election night like to you in how the results came in? And
yeah. So, Senator Fowler and I were running together, and so he's never run for an office like that before, and I hadn't either. And his name is Dale, and my name's Dave. I have an older brother named, I can just tell you this real quick. So I have an older brother named Dale, and so when Dale Fowler and I, when we would go to events together, they'd call him Dave, they'd call me Dale, and so we just decided, rather than trying to explain it to people, we just roll with it. So then I had people calling talking to my brother saying, hey, congratulations, you're running for office. And it's like, no, that's my brother Dave, and Dale is Dale Fowler. And so we worked together very well, and we were actually together that night of being elected. So we're at Mackey's Pizza, all right? And so, again, I don't know if we're winning or losing. I'm preparing myself, again, in the back of my mind to not win. And so that night is, things are tight, whatever. And I'll two things, and I should have brought the book with me. I have a daily a men's Bible reading that I read every day. And I will tell you this, I can do it from memory pretty good. But so I got the reading out. It was that night before the election. So Penny and I get to bed about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. So I thought, I just want to read and see, because there's a thought for the day, there's some reading, and then there's a Bible verse. And so I read the election day, and it says something about you've been my servant, and so it says you'll be my representative on earth. I'll be your God in heaven. That book, I get goosebumps today. That's exactly. In fact, I have that, and I could show it to you. And every now and then, I'll get it out and read it to people and show it. But that's exactly what it said. So I took that book and threw it on the floor that night of the election, because I read that when I found out that I had won. But in the middle of the night reading that was the encouragement to thinking, maybe there's something to this. Here that book was written years ago, and that exact stuff that I needed for that day, Aaron, for that, what's the chance?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So election night, so I get a call from John Bradley, and it's about 7:30. Polls close at 7, and he calls my cell phone, and he says, this is John Bradley. He said, I'm conceding the race. I said, what? I said, it's awful early. He said, no. He said, the numbers are too big. It can't overcome them. And I thought, that's the last thing I'm going to do, is let him concede the race to me, and then me have to call him back at 10 o'clock.
Oh.
And so I argued with him. I wouldn't let him do it, but of course he did. And so, in fact, I will tell you this: that was the first time I ran. Ever since then, no one's ever called me. A couple of times people they called and weren't able to get a hold of me or whatever, but actually to talk to me. So that's what happened. And then that's the night, of course, that Trump wins, Senator Fowler wins. And so we're just, and at the time, didn't think about actually what Senator Fowler, and I don't want to say that we did, but it actually, again, and he's a man of faith, that the Lord helped us, and all the people that worked for us and volunteered, and the finances that were put in. But flipped Southern Illinois red. That's when it happened. And so you had Terry Bryant. She was actually a state rep for Mike Boss' office. He had gone on to Congress. And so she was there, and that basically it. And so what an exciting time. And it's just been wild ever since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So flash forward then, you win. 2 months later,
Yeah.
you are seated
Right.
in the General Assembly.
Right.
What was that like?
Well, that was amazing, and just every day that I drive to the Capitol, still, because you can see the Capitol several miles from when you're coming in on 55. It's like, that's where I work. It's intimidating. I'm in awe, and still, and it's been a few years, but it still feels like it's unbelievable. And I will tell you this too. So Sue Hamilton actually volunteered in the race, and so when I win, it's like, okay, we have an office, got to have someone run the office. She said, well, I'm retired. She said, until we figure something out, you get somebody. She said, I'll help you. So she stuck around a couple of years with me, and so then a whole other story too. So there's no job description. You go for a little bit of training, but as far as how you run your office or what you do, and of course one party loses, so a new party gets the office, and so what do they hand over to you? What do they leave you with? And we won't even get into all that, or what they didn't leave you with, and so figuring it all out. And so we started from scratch. Again, I looked at Sue, and she looked at me, and it's like, well, we won. Now what do we do? So we had this office to run inside. So my philosophy, and it still stands the same today, is being a servant, serving people. And our constituent services in our office is tops in the state. I mean, people know during COVID, we had people calling all over the state. They thought they were calling Springfield because they found out that they could call this number, which was our office number, and we could help people. And so that's what we do, Aaron, is in Springfield, we're working on legislation. In the district, we're helping people.
So as we kind of wrap up,
right?
What's the most difficult thing since you've been in? Just to do a little bit of, we've got the whole backstory, but what's a really difficult, because this is about leadership and people who might listen, kind of curious about different people who are leaders among us, their path to get there.
Sure.
But when you think of something difficult that you had to deal with once you got on the other side of being elected, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, it's challenging, as far as being in the super minority and those kinds of things, but you build relationships and talk to people and respect people and those kinds of things. You don't lower your standard or your beliefs or those kinds of things. But what has changed is back when I first ran, so you had nobody in a primary. You had to win against the other party in the general. Now that you don't have anyone in the general, you have someone running against you in the primary that's from your party. That's an interesting twist. And so, you're literally doing everything you possibly can to help people, work on legislation, those kinds of things, 24/7. People know I'm accessible. It isn't just Monday through Friday or catch him in the office or whatever. And so then you do all that, and then you have some people that just this Facebook and trolling and all these different things. It can wear on you, but when you're doing what's right and you're doing what you need to do to help people, that's my motivation. And but I will tell you that that it's interesting. I mean, it's almost like what's going on here. We're in the super minority. We're going to beat each other up instead of trying to move the ball down the field politically. That is the challenge going on.
What is something that you feel like maybe is not understood about you, or that people who have opposed you in the past, the other side, would be surprised to know about you?
Well, I'm an open book, and so I think people at first didn't realize just how hard a worker that I am, and that politicians are supposedly, all show and no go. And so, I like attention. I like, the cheers I do and all those kinds of things, and motivate people and emotional. I don't know, my father told me that it's not about you, it's about the person that you're working with and for. So I have to work really hard at, keeping in check with that. So, so not bragging about me. So if some things you're not going to find out about me, and unless you just kind of find out, because it's about you, it's not about me. And I'll finish with a quick story there.
Sure.
So I'm in 5th grade. Mom and Dad have a shelter care home business. Scott Tomer, who's his parents, he's in 5th grade and moves to Benton, and so we're in the neighborhood, and so I'm standing across the street from our house. I got a big mouth, and I talk loud, because in the house of 8 kids, if you go to, people say you talk too fast and you talk too loud. It's like, well, that's how it is from the time I was born if I was going to get something in. So I'm across the street, and I'm bragging and saying, hey, Scott, my mom and dad have 4 shelter care homes. I was bragging to him, trying to, and so I said it loud enough that night, we're at home, and my dad says, who are you talking to today? I said, what? He said, well, that boy across the street that you were talking to. Oh, that's Scott Tomer, new kid in the neighborhood. Well, what were you talking about? Well, I don't know. Well, he knew exactly. He said, we don't brag. He said, the Lord has blessed us. He said, we work hard. And I got a whipping that night for bragging, and so with a belt. And so I tell people, I said, I'll never forget that my father bragged about the Lord, not about his accomplishments. And so I said, politicians, we have this ego, and so you keep that in check. And I tell that story, and I wanted to tell that today. I'm sorry I didn't get it in there earlier, but so that's important to me. It's not about Dave Severin. It's about my 107,000 constituents, helping them, doing everything I possibly can, never looking at being in the super minority. My goal is that there's someone needs help, let's figure out a way to help them.
Dave, anything else?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today, and I hope that what I've shared today will inspire someone to realize that, maybe you're going down a path this way, and then there's another path that God has a plan for you. That all of my life, He was training me to do the job that I was doing today, and I had no idea, didn't have a clue.
Maybe this podcast is the Lord saying to somebody, they're getting another chance.
Absolutely.
Much like the Lord once said to you. So
absolutely. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for being on here.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. And that'll wrap us up.
All right. Thanks.